Who would like to go? I'm just going to start with Gracie then, and Tracy. I was really hoping I would be first.
No, this is mine. That was a huge draw for me, actually. For me personally as well, I am his understudy, which I think is really fun. No surprise! Now I know who did my program. Yeah, so I just, I think there's something really fantastic about a female-led story, actually led by the females. There's a lot of, I think there's a lot of material out there that does champion women, but still feels quite male-centered in the actual script and stuff. So this just, oh my god, I was leaping at the chance to be a part of this.
Yeah. Oh, and actually, and you guys, if you don't want to answer this question, you don't have to. But and again, audience, how many are parents in the company? Parents? Any parents?
I have a cat.
I have 3.
Cats. Okay. I have a dog, so we're all good. Okay, so but female empowerment then, Sian Louise.
Yeah, I have a lot of like really strong female like inspirations in my life. I guess like my mom, she's like always been very driven, and like I immigrated to America when I was really young, and she was the reason we moved out there. And I've always had like a really strong female presence in my life with family and also friends. So being able to be part of a show like this where it really like champions female stories of all different kinds was really cool. So yeah, I was itching to be a part of this when I saw the breakdown.
Yna.
I think even though there's one man on stage, the air, like the atmosphere that we live in is the patriarchy. And so even when there's like, it's like the Bechdel test, like when are we gonna end up bringing out men? Because unfortunately, it is an active choice to decenter men in your lives. And even though the show is about women's choices, it is the way that we choose to respond to how men treat us. And so it's like this unspoken secret, a whisper, even though there's not a choice. Like there's still a sailor in June's story, and it doesn't have to be about the sailor, but there was a man involved. And I think that's such an interesting like dynamic to play with. And yeah, I think that's what I'm thinking about.
That's great. Francis.
I don't know if I can add anything, like any hot takes to anything anyone's said, but I think in the rehearsal room I found that the way we approach things and the just the general vibe was very different than I'd experienced before, because there were so many, the presence was so female, and I don't know, it felt like it set me free a little bit, like I allowed myself to be sillier and just bolder and to fail more, I think, I don't know, it just felt very kind of brave but safe at the same time.
I love that. Brave but safe. It really does. Yeah. Cindy.
Like Sian said, I've got 3 sisters. I've got a lot of like very outspoken, very speak with their chest about everything kind of women. And I feel like, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but sorry in advance. But we had I'm not a big review girl, but we had a not so nice one, and it was written by a man, and there was a moment, and I won't say who, what, where, but there was a moment where he wrote something like, in all of this, we are women, we are strong, and I was like, we did our jobs right. For me, I do think, as Yna said, I think because we live in a specific structure, and I will bring this layer in as well. I forget who wrote this, but there's an idea and a concept of the idea that the opposite of patriarchy isn't necessarily like matriarchy or feminism, but it is other. It is queerness. It is inclusion. It is not a room where we're a bunch of women who have to compete We just accept each other as we are, and we've challenged each other. I walked into that room shitting myself after week 1. I was like, oh my god, they're so good! And I feel so energized by all of this because it is so not, it's not toxic at all. And that is for me, regardless of what drew me, what made me want to stay in the room, is that, for sure.
Fantastic, Rebecca.
I don't know if I can add much to it, just to, I guess, to reiterate the fact that it was a real pleasure to be in such a female-centered room. It's very unusual, and such a female-centric piece, and a piece that centers female joy and agency as much as it does the difficult stuff. Because I mean, the only comparable experience I've had professionally in terms of a female-heavy cast was the House of Nada Alba, which, of course, their lives are completely revolving around a man. So this was it's just so unusual and such a joyful thing to be a part of.
Yeah, I mean, it was, as everyone said, it was such a beautiful room to explore all these topics about women's lives and choice, and like kind of champion each other to be like brave. And I felt really supported by everyone too, because everyone just wants us to do our best, which is, and the creative team, everyone, producers, everyone involved. But in terms of the piece, I think it feels like as a woman in today's society, even though we're trying to be the most independent thinking as you can. Like I'm still constantly trying to undo all the conditioning that I've had in society, and that's going to take work. So it's interesting to see the 3 timelines where, like, Kate doesn't know how to even think like that. She doesn't know how to approach that. She literally doesn't have the words for it. And then you get to Jean's timeline. She's like 100 years forward, even in terms of what that means, and she has this independence that she might not be. Well, she does explain it actually in more words than what Kate has, and then you get to the modern day timeline and they have it again. So like seeing that build kind of has a hope for the future in terms of where we can get to and what the next generations will be like.
Yeah, where one story ends, another begins. And Allie. Have you ever been so outnumbered in a company?
It's interesting you say that. Like growing up, I grew up in Scotland, surprise. But like I grew up doing like drama clubs and like dance clubs, and I was the only boy, so this feels very familiar. So yeah, it's just it was interesting. So like when it was only really when we started like getting into performances, and like the gentlemen like in the audience would come up to me afterwards, and like press night, somebody said to me, "Oh, it's really exciting to see like there only be one guy on stage, as opposed to like I'm used to seeing things that are one woman and majority men." And it was only really then that maybe like naively and selfishly I realised, oh yeah, like that's kind of true. And now I see it all the time, like on my feed on social media, past announcements. I'm thinking back to shows I've seen 5-10 years ago, and it's so true that just growing up, I'd look at all the guys and be like, oh, I want to do that, I want to do that, I want to do that, like not thinking that the other side of it, someone sat next to me is probably having a completely different experience and seeing one female on stage, and that's who represents them. So this feels very nice, very safe, but I also think it's a testament to the writing, because I don't think any of the male characters feel like they're present, or that their voice is there as a conflict, to say what it needs to say without there being the need for anything more. And I think it's nice to play all 3, as kind of Kirsty was saying, like Jamie compared to Thomas compared to Ronan, they're 3 very different people with 3 very different experiences and 3 very different relationships with the women in this story, which is nice to play, and it's nice not to sit in it for too long, but yeah.
And also 3 very different accents.
Yes.
I wanted to say in an interview that I read, Tania, with you and Ben, you described this company as genuine fire, and I think that. And it's also a genuine fire and sort of ensemble of the truest sense. You see like with the movement and the song, you are we're so seamlessly working together throughout. It's really, really beautiful. Okay, I've been hogging. So the 3 people I said I'd call on first, who were they? Second row, let's start with you.
Thanks so much for the show. I really enjoyed it. There's like an Aboriginal concept that when we meet, our generations are meeting at the same time. So I wondered about how you thought about which generations to pick on.
What a good question. I think that, to be
very guided by the songs. So I think we started ballad first. So we started by like, oh, we want to use this ballad from Scotland, this ballad from Ireland, and this ballad from Appalachia, and track that. And then we were like, what is the year that appeared? That. And then that's kind of like how we got those ancestors in. We also obviously wanted to talk about the migration of that. So we wanted to talk about like where we were at politically in Scotland, and then in Ireland, and then that part of the kind of first crossing over to the US. So yeah, that is kind of like the reasoning behind those ancestral lines.
In the program as well, and the song list does show which are the traditional ballads, as Tania's just described, as well as the original numbers. As a company, do you find it any different performing one versus the other, the traditional ballads versus the original music?
I guess there's a stylistic difference in some in terms of vocal choices, but I think Finn's done such a beautiful job of weaving them and making it feel so cohesive, you know, that in that sense there's never any kind of, oh god, now we're kind of grinding gears and going from one to another.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say culturally they're different, at least for me. Like, as a Black American, our folk music is way more sort of like open vowels, and I don't know how to describe it. It's a very different kind of sing. This music feels very consonant forward and lots of words in a bar. Lots of words in a bar, whereas we're like, hey. That's two fucking words. Three bars. But I do feel, as a result, I'm so sorry, I curse a lot. I'm a New Yorker, but I feel like that was not a struggle, but an exciting tackle for me.
Yeah. Well, this is one on the other hand. Sorry, I'm going to come back to you in the back and then to you. Yeah, back row.
I love the show, I love the energy, I love the ballads, thank you so much. I've just got a silly maybe question about the book, and I didn't quite catch the tension between Kate and the Presbyterian minister Jamie. I'm not sure if it's just because of lack of knowledge about what was going on in the Scottish Presbyterian context in the 17th century, but can you enlighten me on what was, I mean, they were married, so I didn't quite understand the trouble of she bearing a child, or is it just that she didn't want it?
I think that's the crux of it, is that you can love someone very much and be married and still not want a child.
Okay.
Kirsty, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it is basically that, and not having the option and not knowing how to have not knowing that you cannot have any other choice, and by God's will you are supposed to bear children. And I think the thought of that for her in particular was quite terrifying, and something that she didn't understand why it felt so wrong to her, but she had to find a way out of it.
Isn't that beautifully rendered as well in Unexpected Visitor? When you are talking about the unexpected visitor, Kate, with such revulsion, really. Whereas Jean, Yna, you are excited, anticipating it, even though you're the one who is doing it on her own. How did you rehearse a song like that together? Did you talk about the difference in the emotions that the two characters are going through?
No, not really. I think it speaks for itself in the writing that they want such completely polar opposite things, and both of those are so valid. And also you can love someone so much and not because they're going to be a great father, and I can love a child so much, or because it represents what I think is the future. And I also think it's brilliantly mirrored with Sarah and Alex and how they see their positions in this world. And I think we've definitely talked about it backstage, the idea of a person or a woman can be called maternal, and it has nothing to do with bearing children. And I think that means warmth and kindness and understanding and empathy, and you never have to know someone with the same DNA as you to feel those feelings for them. So we talked about that once, but not even in regards to Jean and Kate just asked.
That's so interesting you say that, because I was focused, I kept thinking about the mothers and maternal people in the stories in addition to the three characters. So Aunt Betty, we learned that you could never have children. Sarah's mother, we don't know what happened, why she was not in your life. Ronan, your wife, but also Thomas's wife who died in childbirth. There are just so many, how women come to that point, which I think was part of the line of exploration, wasn't it? Very good. Front row, right here.
Hello. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for the show, because I've been listening to it since it's 2023, so I'm very happy to see it in person. My question is about the costume, and I just want to make sure I'm reading the room right. So when Sarah's having a fantasy of seeing these ancestors, is that correct? So therefore, like for example, with Jean's costume, is a lot of denim, which wouldn't have been there. So she's imagining Jean. Is that? Am I getting this?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great, I just want to make sure.
I think that Carly Brownbridge is our costume designer. We worked a lot on what would be the kind of like musical concert version of this music, right? I think that a big part of like the show's kind of visual aesthetic was conceived around, we're talking about these ballads, they sound quite old right now, but at the time they would have been the bops, right? They would have been the bop of the 1600s. So it's about like how are we kind of building an ensemble that doesn't necessarily feel historically accurate. There are some elements of historical accuracy, but actually it's more about the denim communicating the youth, or for example Kate having more of like the belt and the adventure. So it's like different elements are communicating more about their characters rather than being necessarily historically accurate, was the reason behind it.
Very, very well observed. Yes.
Going off of your comment, I did love Sarah's costume transition. Going from a Nick's, is just too sad, but going from a sweatshirt, yeah, right, to all of a sudden she's wearing the Western shirt, and then the boots come out, and I just thought that was so wonderful, that transition. Oh, and your accent, correct?
Yeah, I'm not from there.
And then your as the show progresses, your accent gets progressively more southern, I felt.
Yeah, I think it's because she connects with like people from her past more in those later scenes. And I don't know about anybody else with an accent, but when I go back home to Durham, my accent gets really thick when I'm around. So I just kind of thought that when she's speaking to Betty, when she's speaking to Ronan, it would probably thicken up a little bit. Because they're
like
speaking
that.
back at her in the same accent. So yeah.
And she's also accepting and claiming
there's that as
isn't
well.
she? There's that fantastic lyric. What is it? I could never have stayed, but it's a piece of me I will never trade.
Yeah.
These are people. Great question. Okay. Yes, in the checks.
Yeah, you've talked a lot about like the two kind of lines of what I probably not be
Lines of expiration.
Yeah. I felt it's like, and you could really kind of feel those within the story. They were like, and I really enjoyed like all of the music and and you could really tell that those through lines. Was there anything that you felt like I felt like I was kind of wanting to know more about like Appalachian culture specifically, or like the experiences of like Black women versus like, 'cause there's only one Black person on stage, and I wanted to know more about that. Was there anything that you felt like in the development that you wish you had explored more, or like how did you kind of talk about those things with as you were developing the story?
What do you have to leave out?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I think, ultimately we're trying to make a story out of 4 different timelines, and so like, frankly, that's why it's taken 7 years, because it's like, every time we go, like in a previous version, we were a lot more like Kate and Jean centered, and then we really missed a lot of Sarah and Alex, and in this version we're like, okay, we need to bring more of Sarah and Alex, and then we leave some of those folks behind, and then there was a version that we're like, oh, we need to bring more Betty, and so we're just constantly doing these like pulls of, the more stage time you give this side, the less you lose here, and the more you give here, the more you leave here. And so I think that there's a lot of, you know, in the musical migration, there is a lot more that we wanted to explore, and that's something definitely that once it hits American shores, that Finn is like, there is so much to that story that we're leaving out and that we wanted to hook onto. But the truth is that we just don't have stage time without losing one of them. Or, you know, we could lose Betty's homophobia storyline behind, or we could lose Jean's, you know. It's constantly right now in terms of development about like where we put the focus of the story. So that's kind of where we're finding
I
ourselves.
think you'll have to write a sequel.
But I mean, I do also think, sorry, I do also think that there isn't, I don't know, I don't think necessarily the onus is on y'all to tell every point of view of it. I just don't. I think like, there is a deliciousness in the specificity of the migration, of the part of the migration that is being told. And I hope, which is to me the goal of some of my favorite pieces of theater, that people will go, oh shit, there's like a couple layers missing here. I'm gonna go home and ra-ta-ta-ta-ta on the computer and see what happens. Because I do think, and it's a conversation that we have had, I would love for there to be like an underlayer about the Black part of the migration of this music. That's a different musical. That's something else. And once it leaves Europe, it's something else. And I do think you have to start from a different vantage point if you are going to tell that story. So I appreciate being included in the way that I am, both culturally and otherwise, but I respect that this is the one part of the story that's being told, and that it gets to be, you know, it gets to be in isolation at the same time a representation of the bigger picture.
I just wanted to say also with the homophobia thing, that seems to me like I couldn't imagine that not being included, because particularly, again, making the point that a lot of this folk music, and particularly the Appalachian version of it, is seen as quite conservative, and so that's a key part of the story, isn't it? That she is reclaiming it as a queer woman. Am I missing that?
No, absolutely. And I think that, I think that's, I was just picking up on that because it is one layer of exploration, but like there should be a whole play just on that. And then there's a whole play on like Kate's right to have an abortion. And then there's a whole play, so I think that's why I was picking up on it. But yeah, a big part of, the Betty storyline was to go like tradition versus the new, and how you hold on to the tradition.
Yeah, great. Okay, have I missed any hands over here? What, 3 in a row? You're all gonna know. We're gonna move around a little bit. Over here, yes.
I wanted to thank the creative team and the company. You're all phenomenal. I'm just listening to the concept now and seeing it here on my 1 week in London, and I happened to be searching on like what was stage. Shout out to Alex Mars. We worked together.
Yes, Alex Mars.
And she pulled me over. So I have a question more about the development of the movement in this show and how like company as like another piece of percussion in this show, and it is such a small space, and we all filled it in a way that could fill a house so many more sizes than this. I'm just curious about what the process of like landing on the movement component of the show.
I can't possibly pronounce the choreographer's name.
Tina Vimbanashi Subanda is our wonderful choreographer. She is honestly sensational. She's a collaborator that I've worked with a couple of times before, and I really love her work. I'm actually going to pass on the mic to Ali, who is our dance
It's such a joy, because music is so rooted in this show. And when you start a rehearsal process, the first thing you do is learn music. And Tino would be in the room watching us as we would just sing these songs, which are so expressive naturally. And she would pick up on like small habits and things that we would do and turn that into bigger phrases of movement, which was fascinating for me to just watch that happen at the corner of my eye. And then as we kind of started to build it in the space, which as you say is not massive, I guess a lot of the movement had to come from like the truth of the gesture and the truth of like, a lot of the lyrics are very elemental. Waves crashing, wind moaning, earth, wind, fire, all of that was really used in a way that feels very truthful and very eruptive, but also very still. Like, when we're traveling, but when we're not, we're stood still, but it still feels massive and it still feels expressive because of the way that she built it, I think. That's been my experience kind of watching it. I don't know if anyone else has
It
anything.
definitely feels like it's come from a complete place of like grounded, like kind of earthy, I don't know, rootedness, I guess. As someone who trains as an actor and is not, I don't know why I didn't know. As someone who's like trained as like an actor, singer, but not a dancer, I've got a bit of movement, but it was like so nice to work with a choreographer who was about bringing the truth of it from us, and not, it was never her giving us like, this is what the move is and this is exactly how it has to be. She would feel it out with us and be like, this isn't working. It doesn't feel like it's in the style of what we're going for, and she was constantly keeping an eye on if it was coming from the right place rather than if it looked good. And I think that's really latched onto the story, the plot points, and where we were in the story.
And it was, sorry, I was going to say, it's never one size fits all either. She sort of let all of us interpret it as we wanted, which is really freeing, as you know, likewise. Very much a mover, not a dancer, so it just gives you the confidence to be like, okay, well, I'll throw myself around in my own way, and that's fine.
Right, I've been given a signal that I have only a few minutes left. So I always like to end with a question that everybody has to answer, but very, 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 very briefly. So here's your heads up for everyone to think about. Inheritance tracks. We talk a lot about the music being inherited. Do you have an inheritance track from your own family, just one song? Or what's your favorite song on the show? And then too hard. But then also I did want to touch on the politics, the moment that we're in. It seems like a very, very important time to stage this, and of course there's a line, a reference that Sydney's character says in the show about why wanting to bring a child into this world with this White House, with fascism on the rise. Is that a line that you've, put in recently? How does the moment make you feel about the piece now?
Well, I fluctuate between being Sarah and Alex on a daily basis every day. So I think that, those two sides of the coin of like, the world is in flames, why have children? The world needs good people to have children to carry, like that duality is, really at the crux what the piece is about, right? And I think that it's the why have children is one part of the political conversation. The other part of the political conversation is that we're talking about a decision that 50% of the world's population is the single biggest event that can happen to them, and we treat it as if it's like a given. It's just like, well, women have babies and babies will continue to exist, and it's just like, for 50% of the world's population, it is the single most dramatic thing that will happen in your life or not happen in your life. And that decision is mega, and it blows my mind that there is not many pieces of work about it. So I think that is like another part of the conversation. And the other part of the conversation is also just like queer identities and intersectional identities and the rights that queer people have today to be parents are not to be taken for granted. In many places of the world, they are not a given. And so there is just like this whole Venn diagram of like who gets to have a choice and a say and why. And if that's not worth making theatre, then I don't know what is.
Katy, would you take it to the United States? Yeah. You're going to take it to Minneapolis? Right, okay, inheritance tracks. I'm going to start this end this time. Kirsty.
Oh!
What's the question? Inheritance tracks.
This is not a Scottish song, I guess, but like my mum is a singer and kind of multi-retired now, but she was on a reality TV show when I was, way before I was born, and she sang Beautiful by Carole King. And I grew up watching the videotape of her singing it, and then last year I was in a show where I played Carole King and I sang that as the final song of the show. So it was a whole round moment of that song being passed on.
Alright, I'm really told I've got to finish now. So, okay, single name of song, and if you don't want to answer, you don't have to. Rebecca.
Separate ways.
Separate ways.
Oh shit. No. Love is pleasing.
From the show.
Or whatever, yes. From the show.
From the show, okay. Can you skip me? I'll come back to me.
There's an Appalachian ballad called Shenandoah.
Shenandoah. Ali.
early in the spring when we do that Kaylee. Yes.
It's the ballad medley in Sarah's song.
Okay.
I Wish My Baby Was Born. It's so fucking cathartic to do that song every show.
And
What's
fun.
more?
Change of plan.
I Wish My Baby Was Born.
Okay, wonderful. Well, you guys are champions for this show. It is. Oh, you didn't come back.
I love them all.